Overmatch. There's a lot of talk about overmatch. There's a lot of rumors right now. There are a lot of confirmed rumors right now. Most of you may know that the ammunition has switched to our current operating weapon systems. Our pistols are changing, our optics are changing, our equipment is ever changing. If we remember back to the Soldier's Handbook of 1917, it doesn't matter what equipment you have, it is being able to use the equipment and have overmatch against our threats, right? And in the ever-changing battlefield space of near-peer threats, we need to ensure that we understand the new equipment, the new ammunition, and utilize that. If we cannot be consistent with the equipment that has been provided, we will not be able to achieve overmatch. That is the length of this slide. Is everybody tracking? Next slide. Chapter 2, if we all open our .9s and we can tab this new Chapter 2 for quick reference for you back at the unit level. Chapter 2 covers rifle and carbine principles of operation. As you can see here on the visual slide deck, there is the upper receiver and the lower receiver of the weapon system. I will now show you what is defined on this M4. Starting at the forwardmost end of the weapon system, we have your flash hider or muzzle brake. Moving downwards, we have your barrel. Your barrel is now surrounded by your front sight post and front sight aperture. You also have your bayonet lug. You also have your swing swivel mount. Moving forward, your hand grip and handguard and or heat shield with removable plastic protection. Your D-ring disassembly. The upper receiver, the lower receiver. In the lower receiver, your magazine well, your magazine release, your trigger housing, your trigger, your safety selector switch, your pistol grip, your buffer tube with buffer spring inside, your adjustable butt stock, a sling, upper receiver, charging handle, dust cover, magazine release, ejection port, and dust cover. On top of your weapon system, optics that are issued, and we will go into any other equipment that is issued to you for your specific unit. After covering all of the principles of operation, for your M4, we also have this cycle of function. Your cycle of function when operating your M4 includes feeding, chambering, locking, firing, unlocking, extracting, ejecting, and cocking. We will now view a visual video of the M4 carbine cycle of function Moving forward, units of angular measurement, or minutes of angle. I will now bring in Sergeant First Class Fulmer to cover MOA.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Sergeant First Class Fulmer. I am the NCOIC for this year's Marksmanship Academy. A little bit of background on myself. I'm 11 Bravo. I came from the sniper section and the SART section. I was in the sniper section for about 7 years, and I was in the SART section for about 3 years. And that's a little bit about me. All right, now we're going to go into minutes of angle. For the purposes of this class, we're going to keep it a little bit of a baseline knowledge. We're not going to get too into the weeds on it. What you need to understand is that a minute of angle is 1 inch at 100 yards. Now, with minutes of angle, it is a unit of angular measurement. So that means, depending on the distance, that's going to dictate the size of what a minute of angle actually is. At 100 yards, 1 minute of angle is roughly 1 inch. Really close to about 1 inch. At 200 yards, you're looking at 2 inches. At 300 yards, you're looking at 3 inches. 400 yards, you're looking at 4 inches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, since we zero our target, or we zero our weapon systems at 25 yards, we're going to notice that the blocks on here are a little bit smaller than 1 inch. And that is because you are closer to that target, so that unit of angle hasn't had enough time to get fully developed into that 1 full inch at 100, right? So we're bringing it back in, and it's going to be a little bit smaller than 1 inch. So if you actually needed to move that shot group 1 inch at 25 yards, you're actually going to be moving it more than 1 minute of angle.
Chapter 3. Again, please highlight, sticky note, and tab your .9s so that you can quickly reference aiming devices in 3-1. Aiming devices included in Chapter 3 include thermals, optics, pointers, and laser illuminators and laser aiming devices. As we go forward into aiming devices, this is where we all need to pay attention. Raise your hand if you are now attending the Marksmanship Academy with the only aiming device on your M4 weapon system being the backup iron sights or buoys. For you who have raised your hand, and that is the optic system aiming device that you will be utilizing for the Marksmanship Academy, this applies to you. The backup iron sight or buoys for the M4, where do we zero the buoys when we are zeroing during the IWQ? There are notches as well as a lever to change your vertical elevation on your backup iron sight. The correct placement for your backup iron sight when zeroing the M4 weapon system is highlighted in blue. Your zero elevation is M4 on the 300-meter setting. The backup iron sight goes 200, 300, white line, 400, 450, 500, 550, and 600. If you have ever heard that the buoys backup iron sight should be zeroed on the white line, that is not entirely incorrect, but it is for the M16A4. The longer barrel with higher pressures for that round will mean that we need to slightly increase elevation for our backup iron sights. Some considerations for the soldiers that will be using the backup iron sights at the Marksmanship Academy include your windage count. And so on the right-hand side, as we look at the visual aid of the backup iron sight, is the windage left and right adjustment setting for your buoys, okay? That will change your left and right. Your vertical will be your adjustment clicks on the left-hand side. M16 versus M4. We should not see too many M16s floating around the Colorado National Guard. Most units, if not all, have switched over to the M4 platform. We will now need to take into consideration for future marksmanship academies and training at the unit level the new weapon system that will be introduced, who knows when, hopefully probably very soon. Tightening. With all optic systems on your weapon platform, I don't care what you're using, if you are experiencing issues or your soldiers are experiencing issues using the backup iron sight system, the buoys, during the IWQ, one of the first things that you should check as subject matter experts is to walk over to that soldier and ensure that their backup iron sight is not loose. referencing the TC for how tight that weapon system should be tightened down to the upper receiver quad rail attachment system. Witness marking. This is something that is on the competitive side of shooting that should be implemented at all levels. And I would argue that the other instructors here at the Marksmanship Academy would agree. Whatever optic system you are using on your M4, I would recommend going to your supply sergeants and requesting paint markers. We have them because we paint marker and number a lot of pieces of equipment that are issued at the unit level. You can take those paint markers, and once your optic systems are where you want them as the end user in order to use proper eye relief for those optic systems, once that optic system is in place and secured, we highly recommend using a paint pen or marker and marking the optic system itself down on to the upper receiver at multiple reference points. This ensures that if this optic system is removed, whichever optic system you are using, the end user soldier should, in theory per doctrine, remain and keep zero by reattaching your optic system where it has been indicated for the soldier to use correctly. The doctrine states that the zero will remain the same for the end user, that specific end user, maybe not for a different soldier utilizing that weapon system. Moving forward, the .9 covers a mechanical zero or a battlefield zero. You can read in the TC on what is described as a mechanical zero or a battlefield zero. However, I do want you to all understand that as we are moving forward with more advanced equipment going to overmatch, and if used correctly, we will be more lethal on the battlefield or more competitive representing your state. If we have to use our backup iron sights, which I highly recommend when training and conducting the IWQ, that you as subject matter experts and leaders go back and ensure that we are not only zeroing an optic if provided at the unit level, but also ensuring that the backup iron sights and the front sight post is zeroed, because the name implies the worst case scenario. Whether in competition or downrange, if your primary optic system fails, the end soldier should and will need to remove the optic system and utilize your backup iron sights. If they are zeroed beforehand at the unit level in a training environment, there is no issue. However, if the soldier needs to expediently acquire a mechanical zero or battlefield zero, the process would be to take your backup iron sight or buoy system and on the windage left-right adjustment, move all the way to either the right or to the left. The soldier and end user would then count the clicks, moving from the far left lock to the far right lock, or the far right lock stop to the far left. And then, once the number of clicks has been determined, move to the middle number of those clicks. That would be the manufacturer's center point of that backup iron sight or buoy system. With the front sight post, moving forward with mechanical zeroing. After your backup iron sight or buoy system has been mechanically zeroed per manufacturer's spec in your E or emergency pace plan procedure only, as it should be done during the IWQ, the end soldier level or subject matter experts can mechanically zero the front sight post. Mechanically zeroing the front sight post entails adjusting the front sight post base marked in red flush with the base of the housing of the front sight aperture. Once your backup iron sight and front sight post aperture have been mechanically zeroed, the weapon system is still not zeroed and needs to be confirmed by the end user, making adjustments as needed. Moving on, who in the class of the Marksmanship Academy has been assigned and is currently attached to their weapon system, the Red Dot or CCO M68? Moving back to what Sergeant Fulmer had talked about in the class for minutes of angle. Minutes of angle is very applicable to all optic systems being used. Adjustments the United States military on these optic systems that we are going over are adjusted in minutes of angle. What we have talked about in the previous slide with the backup iron sight still applies for marking and mounting and securing correctly per doctrine your optic system with correct eye relief and sight picture for the end user. A difference is now that this is a battery-powered optic. Batteries need to be removed when in storage and turned back into the supply sergeant. It is highly recommended for all military equipment, whether it be optics, electronic hearing protection, night vision devices, laser aiming devices, and or thermals, or anything that requires batteries. Batteries should be lithium. Batteries should not be alkaline batteries, because alkaline batteries, if leaked, can ruin and destroy the equipment. Removing your batteries for long-term or short-term storage will alleviate that problem. Ensuring that your soldiers have a battery during the IWQ and tables, and as well as backup batteries in your range boxes, is a good idea and highly encouraged. On the M68 CCO, there is a brightness adjustment setting that will adjust the brightness of the red dot perceived by the viewer and end user. We highly recommend that during tables 4 of zeroing and grouping, that the brightness level be turned down so dim that it is barely visible to the end user. This is because, as seen on the visual aid, your red dot in your M68 CCO has a 2 MOA or minutes of angle aiming point. At 100 yards, 2 MOA equals 2 inches. So 2 MOA aiming point will cover 2 inches of that target downrange. That is amplified at the 25 meter zero. To alleviate blooming or the dot optic appearing brighter or blooming out the sight picture, turning down the red dot sensitivity will help alleviate issues for the soldier. Who in the class for the Marksmanship Academy students here are using the Trijicon ACOG or Rifle Combat Optic RCO? For those utilizing this optic system, just like all other optic systems that were talked about, marking and mounting of that optic system on your weapon system is paramount to ensure that it is tightened correctly. The parallax in the ACOG or Rifle Combat Optic is heightened very, very much. What we are going to talk about in parallax is looking straight through a magnified optic. The end soldier user needs to be able to clearly view through their optic system a clear sight picture and not start to see what is termed as scope shadow. If we look through an optic system and we do not have proper eye relief or a cant in our vision, you will start to see a shift of the vertical stadia reticle, and it will assume and look like the vertical stadia reticle is moving, because it is. Consistency and repeatability of placing the end user's face on the weapon system to have a repeatable sight picture every time will help reduce the parallax of the optic system. Now that we have talked about proper eye relief with a magnified optic, as well as parallax, and trying to make sure that the end user soldier finds their proper eye relief for a crystal clear picture through a magnified optic and reduce the parallax as much as possible, we can move on to, especially for the RCO or ACOGs, for those of you in the room and for those of you who are assigned them at your units, there are fiber optic illuminators versus tritium illuminated optics. The difference being the optics shown on the visual aid now with the light catching aperture that will reflect the light and illuminate the reticle for the end user, versus a tritium optic that is self-illuminated. The brightness for both of those illuminations needs to be taken into consideration, just like the CCO or red dot. If it is a very sunny day and you are using a fiber optic illuminator on your ACOG, you may have already seen in the field or done yourselves or with your soldiers surrounding you using some type of tape or covering to help dim the brightness of your reticle. The tritium does not have that same problem as much in changing brightnesses on sunny days. However, that tritium can wear out over time. On most of the ACOGs that are issued, supply also has the filter cover that would go in front to help reduce glare and laser reflective signature for the optic system. Shooting competitively or for the IWQ, where we care about being consistent and accurate and precise as possible, if commanders and your units allow, our recommendation is to remove the filter cover, as it is one more optical obstruction for the human eye. It is a very slight optical obstruction, but it is recommended to remove for training in IWQ and then reapplied per unit SOP.